Okay, welcome back. I hope everybody had a nice lunch. Okay, now this morning, when I was talking about DOIs, I mentioned the problem of what happens when an article appears on more than one website. And I promised you it was a mystery that I would answer this afternoon. And the answer is something called multiple resolution, which is a means of pointing a DOI to content when that content exists on 2 or 3 or even more websites. And particularly because readers may have a particular preference to visit one website or perhaps another. So how do we deal with that? And this can come out because your content exists on the library site and you stop publishing, and then it goes on an archive site, for example with clocks, where it's hosted at Stanford. And also it can happen when you publish perhaps on your university site, and then you start working with a publisher and they put all the content on their site, but you still, for some reason, would want to keep it on your own. So the solution is multiple resolution. And in this case, the DOI does not go to the article landing page or the resolution page that I showed last time. It goes to an interim page that then tells you on what sites you can find the content so you can link out. Schematically, this is what it looks like. The DOI link goes to a page which here has 3 links which each go to different versions of the same content on different websites. So how does it work? There's a primary depositor who is the person that deposits the metadata, and if you like, they are the person that owns the content. They indicate within the metadata that it's multiple resolution, that it appears on more than one place. And then a secondary depositor can't update the metadata that has been deposited by the primary, but can add URLs. So in this case, for example, if you published here on the Academy website, so your journal appears on the Academy website, but you also have an agreement with Taylor and Francis, so your content is also published on Taylor and Francis' site. In this case, you would decide with Taylor and Francis who is the primary depositor, and it's probably you if it's your content. So you deposit the metadata, but within that you tell CrossRef this is multiple resolution. And then Taylor and Francis would deposit the DOI and their URL. So you would have one DOI going to multiple URLs. How it works is the depositor, the primary depositor, makes agreements with the secondary, for example Taylor and Francis, tells CrossRef. You then have to create an interim web page. This is that landing page that says the content is on these sites that points out. And then deposits the XML metadata with an unlock flag. The secondary depositor, in this case Taylor and Francis, create the secondary XML data and deposit that with CrossRef. It's probably easier to show you what it looks like. So this is an example of a multiple resolution page. And this, for example, is a journal that has stopped publishing. And so what has happened here is the publisher no longer publishes this journal and no longer keeps it on their own website. But they have archived it. And they've archived it with Portico, with clocks, and also with KB. So the DOI for the article, and remember, one DOI, one article. So the DOI goes to this page. And on this page, you have the title of the article, the author, the citation, Graft 2001, and the DOI. But you also have, so also at the top, they've said the reason for the multiple resolution, and in this case, it's no longer published. You've got the metadata there, and in fact, in this case, Portico is the prime depositor. So there is a link to the article on Portico. But also, Clocks and KB have the article on their sites as well. So they are the secondary depositors. So in this example, Portico are the primary depositor. They have set up this landing page and put their link on it. Then Clocks and KB have submitted secondary metadata, and their links appear here as well. And it means, as a reader, the DOI still works. And it takes you to somewhere that shows you different places. And you may say, I don't like KB site, I don't like Portico, I'll go to Clocks. So the reader can choose what site they go to. Again, there's more help pages here, so if you have an example of multiple resolution, I recommend you look at them. Now, I mentioned before multiple language articles, and I said here, and I said earlier, different articles, even though they're the same content, because they're in different languages, they should have different DOIs. And this example, DOI 2, was an article published in Learned Publishing. DOI 1 is published in a journal that I can't pronounce in China. So they're on separate websites, they have separate DOIs, so the reference would go to whichever one of them is the right one. Now, why would you use a different DOI? Well, the translation may not be identical. It might introduce errors, or it might correct errors. And authors may update different versions. They shouldn't, but they might do. And a change to one article may not be required on another. So the metadata on one might be incorrect, and therefore you'd want to resubmit it, but the metadata on the second one would be fine. So there are good reasons for using different DOIs. However, having said that, not everything is straightforward, and many journals have decided to only allocate one DOI to the article, even though they make the same article available in multiple languages on the same site. So, although the recommendation is that you should assign a separate DOI to every article, there might be a time when you decide as a publisher that it's more suitable to have one DOI and provide both languages on the one site. I did have some pages for this to show you. Elsevier do this a lot, even though they shouldn't. So you'll have one site that then gives you a link to both languages. A good example of this is the Journal of the German Medical Association. The journal is published in German and in English, but the online site, from the publisher's perspective, the English version is the International Online Journal, even from their perspective. So they're trying to drive all traffic to the English site, not the German site. So they only assign DOIs to the English language articles. They do not assign DOIs to the German language, but when you land on the English language page, there's a link saying, to read this article in German, click here, and it takes you to the German, but they don't assign DOIs to that. And that's because, as a publisher, they are trying to move towards English language. But they still provide the German language, mostly for the print, but it's also a little bit online. So there are exceptions. Now, books are slightly different, because e-books frequently appear on multiple websites. So you'll find an ebook perhaps in an EPUB format on the publisher's site, in a Kindle format on Amazon, maybe PDF on EBSCO, and multiple other sites, because books work differently to journals, ebooks anyway. And the workflows change, so you don't always know who the primary depositor is of the DOI, because sometimes the publisher would assign a DOI to the book on their website, but if it goes through a Kindle workflow, Amazon assigned their own DOI for their own website. So books actually have multiple problems over DOIs and links. So to address this problem, CrossRef has a working party looking at multiple resolution for books to try and manage the system, ideally to get to one DOI, one book, as they are with journals. So the system's being tested, and at the moment it's being called co-access, simply because it's collaborative access rather than primary and secondary depositors. So these are the things that are being discussed at the moment, but this is still up for discussion, and as with many things, it's going to take time to find exactly the right solution for this. So going back to multiple resolution, who can use it? Well, any member can use multiple resolution. There's no extra fee for doing it. You pay the deposit fee exactly as you would for a normal article. And also, should you be publishing normally and then go to multiple resolution, you can also change and shut down the multiple resolution and go back to single resolution, because things change during the life of a publication. So if it's no longer necessary, you can cancel it. Okay. Just while I move on, does anybody have any immediate questions on multiple resolution?